Today is the 26th of August 2010, and this is the 38th time we are talking on the Majjhima Nikaya Suttas. And now we come to Sutta 93, Assalayana Sutta, to Assalayana. Thus have I heard. 1 minute. The next following suttas, the few following suttas are all concerned the Brahmins. It's quite interesting. The sutta show at the time of the Buddha how these Brahmins always try to assert their superiority and try to argue with the Buddha. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Now at that time, 500 Brahmins from diverse provinces were staying at Savatthi for some business or other. Then those Brahmins thought, this recluse Gotama describes purification for all the four castes. Who is there able to dispute with him about this assertion? Stop here for a moment. These Brahmins, they claim that only they are pure. All the other castes, the other three castes are impure. Also, they claim that every morning before dawn and in the evening after dusk, they go and immerse themselves in the river, and they can purify themselves by washing away their sins, but they say all other castes cannot do that. But so when they heard that the Buddha says all the four castes can be purified, they were not happy. So they were trying to think of somebody to go and argue with him. Now on that occasion, a Brahmin student named Assalayana was staying at Savatthi, young, shaven-headed, 16 years old. He was a master of the three Vedas with their vocabularies, liturgy, phonology and etymology, and the histories as a fifth. Skilled in philology and grammar, he was fully versed in natural philosophy and in the marks of a great man. Then the Brahmins thought, there is this young Brahmin student named Assalayana staying at Savatthi, young, shaven-headed, 16 years old, etc., and fully versed in natural philosophy and the marks of a great man. He will be able to dispute with the recluse Gotama about this assertion. So the Brahmins went to the Brahmin student Assalayana and said to him, Master Assalayana, this recluse Gotama describes purification for all the four castes. Let Master Assalayana come and dispute with the recluse Gotama about this assertion. When this was said, the Brahmin student Assalayana replied, Sirs, the recluse Gotama is one who speaks the Dhamma. Now those who speak the Dhamma are difficult to dispute with. I am not able to dispute with the recluse Gotama about this assertion. The second time, the Brahmin said to him, Master Assalayana, this recluse Gotama describes purification for all the four castes. Let Master Assalayana come and dispute with the recluse Gotama about this assertion, for the training of a wanderer has been completed by Master Assalayana. For the second time, the Brahmin student Assalayana replied, Sirs, the recluse Gotama is one who speaks the Dhamma. Now, those who speak the Dhamma are difficult to dispute with. I am not able to dispute with the recluse Gotama about this assertion. A third time, the Brahmin said to him, Master Assalayana, this recluse Gotama describes purification for all the four castes. Let Master Assalayana come and dispute with the recluse Gotama about this assertion. For the training of a wanderer has been completed by Master Assalayana. Let not the Master Assalayana be defeated without having even fought the battle. When this was said, the Brahmin student Assalayana replied, Sirs, The recluse Gotama is one who speaks the Dhamma. Now those who speak the Dhamma are difficult to dispute with. I am not able to dispute with the recluse Gotama about this assertion. Still, sirs, at your bidding, I will go. Stop here for a moment. So, this Assalayana, he heard of the reputation of the Buddha, so he dare not go to debate with the Buddha. But since they persuaded him 3 times, he felt he had no choice, so he was willing to go. Then the Brahmin student Assalayana went with a great number of Brahmins to the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side and said to the Blessed One, I'll stop here for a moment. You see, they only exchange greetings with the Buddha. They never pay respect to the Buddha. So he said to the Blessed One, Master Gotama, the Brahmins say thus, Brahmins are the highest caste. Those of any other caste are inferior. Brahmins are the fairest caste. Those of any other caste are dark. Only Brahmins are purified, not non-Brahmins. Brahmins alone are the sons of Brahma, the offspring of Brahma, born of his mouth, born of Brahma, created by Brahma, heirs of Brahma. What does Master Gotama say about that? I'll stop here for a moment. So this is their belief, Brahmins, that they are born from the great Deva, Brahma or Maha Brahma, who resides in the first jhana plane, the lowest of the form realm. So they claim they are born from the mouth of this Brahma. And the Buddha said, now Assalayana, the Brahmin women are seen having their periods, becoming pregnant, giving birth, and giving suck. And yet those who are born from the wombs of the Brahmin women say thus, Brahmins are the highest caste. Those of any other caste are inferior. Brahmins are the fairest caste. Those of any other caste are dark. Only Brahmins are purified, not non-Brahmins. Brahmins alone are the sons of Brahma, offspring of Brahma, born of his mouth, born of Brahma, created by Brahma, heirs of Brahma. Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha says, it is evident, everybody can see that women, Brahmin women, they become pregnant and give birth to their babies and give suck to their babies. And yet all of you, even though you are born from the Brahmin womb, you say you are born from Brahma's mouth. And he said, although Master Gotama says this, still the Brahmins think thus. Brahmins are the highest caste. Those of any other caste are inferior, etc., etc. And the Buddha replied, what do you think, Assalayana? Have you heard that in Yona and Cambodia and in other outland countries there are only 2 castes, masters and slaves, and that masters become slaves and slaves masters? So I have heard, sir. Then on the strength of what argument or with the support of what authority do the Brahmins in this case say thus, Brahmins are the highest caste, others, those of any other caste are inferior, etc. Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha says, in other countries, they have only 2 caste system, masters and slaves. And masters can become slaves and slaves can become masters. So those masters in those lands, they are the superior caste. So even if Brahmins go there, they are not superior. Although Master Gotama says this, still the Brahmins think thus. Brahmins are the highest caste. Those of any other caste are inferior, etc. What do you think, Assalayana? Suppose a noble, somebody of the noble clan, were to kill living beings, take what is not given, misconduct himself in sensual pleasures, speak falsely, speak maliciously, speak harshly, gossip, be covetous, have a mind of ill will, and hold wrong view on the dissolution of the body after death, would only he be likely to reappear in a state of deprivation in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell, and not a Brahmin. Suppose a merchant or a worker who were to kill living beings, etc., and hold wrong view on the dissolution of the body after death, would only he be likely to reappear in a state of deprivation, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell, and not a Brahmin? No, Master Gotama, whether it be a noble or a Brahmin or a merchant or a worker, those of all four castes who kill living beings, take what is not given, misconduct themselves in sensual pleasures, speak falsely, etc., on the dissolution of the body after death, are likely to reappear in a state of deprivation, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell. And the Buddha said, then on the strength of what argument or with the support of what authority do the Brahmins in this case say thus? Brahmins are the highest caste, those of any other caste are inferior, etc. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha shows him, if anybody misconducts himself by doing the 10 unwholesome karmas, then they are bound for rebirth in a woeful destination. It doesn't matter whether they are nobles or Brahmins or merchants or workers. So in which case they are all the same. Although Master Gotama says this, still the Brahmins think thus. Brahmins are the highest caste, those of any other caste are inferior, etc., etc. What do you think, Assalayana? Suppose a Brahmin were to abstain from killing living beings, from taking what is not given, from misconduct in sensual pleasures, from false speech, from malicious speech, from harsh speech, and from gossip, and were to be uncovetous, to have a mind without ill will, and to hold right view on the dissolution of the body after death, would only he be likely to reappear in a happy destination, even in the heavenly world, and not a noble or a merchant or a worker? No, Master Gotama, whether it be a noble or a Brahmin or a merchant or a worker, those of all four castes who abstain from killing living beings, from taking what is not given, from misconduct in sensual pleasures, etc., on the dissolution of the body after death, are likely to reappear in a happy destination, even in the heavenly world. Then on the strength of what argument or with the support of what authority do the Brahmins in this case say thus? Brahmins are the highest caste, those of any other caste are inferior, etc. Although Master Gotama says this, still the Brahmins think thus. Brahmins are the highest caste, those of any other caste are inferior, etc. What do you think, Assalayana? Is only a Brahmin capable of developing a mind of loving kindness towards a certain region, without hostility and without ill will, and not a noble or a merchant or a worker? No, Master Gotama, whether it be a noble or a Brahmin or a merchant or a worker, those of all four castes are capable of developing a mind of loving kindness towards a certain region, without hostility and without ill will. Then on the strength of what argument or with the support of what authority do the Brahmins in this case say thus? Brahmins are the highest caste, those of any other caste are inferior, etc. Stop here for a moment. These Brahmins, they hope that after death they will be reborn in the Brahma heavens, to have union with Brahma. So they like to practice these Brahma Viharas, this meditation on the divine abidings, where they radiate loving four things, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. The Pali is Metta, Karuna, Mudita, and Upekkha. So when they practice this meditation, then they can attain the jhanas, and they can be reborn in the Brahma heaven. But here he conceded that not only a Brahmin can practice this meditation, any person of any other caste can also do so. Although Master Gotama says this, still the Brahmins think thus. Brahmins are the highest caste, those of any other caste are inferior, etc. What do you think, Assalayana? Is only a Brahmin capable of taking a loofah and bath powder, going to the river and washing off dust and dirt, and not a noble or a merchant or a worker? No, Master Gotama, whether it be a noble or Brahmin or a merchant or a worker, those of all four castes are capable of taking a loofah and bath powder, going to the river and washing off dust and dirt. Then on the strength of what argument or with the support of what authority do the Brahmins in this case say thus? Brahmins are the highest caste, etc. Stop it for a moment. So here the Buddha shows him that any person of any caste can go to the river and wash off the dust and dirt, purify themselves, at least externally, not only Brahmins. Although Master Gotama says this, still the Brahmins think thus. Brahmins are the highest caste, those of any other caste are inferior, etc. So he keeps insisting that Brahmins are the highest caste. What do you think, Assalayana? Suppose a head anointed noble king were to assemble here 100 men of different birth and say to them, "Come, sirs, let any here who have been born into a noble clan, or a Brahmin clan, or a royal clan, take an upper fire stick of salala wood, sandalwood, and Ghotamukha wood, and light a fire and produce heat. And also let any who have been born into an outcast clan, a trapper clan, a workers' clan, a cartwright's clan, or a scavenger's clan, take an upper fire stick made from a dog's drinking trough, or from a pig's trough, from a dustbin, or from castor oil wood, and light a fire and produce heat." What do you think, Assalayana? When a fire is lit and heat is produced by someone in the first group, would that fire have a flame, a color, and a radiance? And would it be possible to use it for the purposes of fire? While when a fire is lit and heat is produced by someone in the second group, that fire would have no flame, no color, and no radiance, and it would not be possible to use it for the purposes of fire. No, Master Gotama, when a fire is lit and produced by someone in the first group, that fire would have a flame, a color, and a radiance, and it would be possible to use it for the purposes of fire. And when a fire is lit and heat is produced by someone of the second group, that fire too would have a flame, a color, and a radiance, and it would be possible to use it for the purposes of fire. For all fire has a flame, a color, and a radiance, and it is possible to use all fire for the purposes of fire. Then on the strength of what argument or with the support of what authority do the Brahmins in this case say thus? Brahmins are the highest caste, etc. I'll stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says there are two groups of people here. One is the higher clan, that means either a noble or a Brahmin. And then if they were to light a fire from good wood, sala wood or salala wood or sandalwood or Ghotamukha wood, and a fire is produced. When you compare it with the second group consists of very low caste people. This trapper, wicker worker, cartwright, scavenger, all these this worker clan, the Sudas, and then even includes the outcast. Outcast is somebody so low there is not even inside one of the four clans, four castes. And then these second group, being of low birth, on top of that, they take wood from dirty places like a dog's drinking trough and a pig's trough, where the dog drinks the water or the pig drinks the water from the dustbin, and castor oil wood. And if they were to produce a heat, a fire, using this dirty wood, this second group, when they produce a fire, the fire is still the same, whether it's produced by this higher clan or the lower clan. The fire, the radiance, the flame, the heat, color, everything would still be the same. Doesn't matter what wood you use, and it doesn't matter who produces the fire. So the Buddha shows him, then they are all the same. Although Master Gotama says this, still the Brahmins think that Brahmins are the highest caste, those of any other caste are inferior, etc. What do you think, Assalayana? Suppose a noble youth were to cohabit with a Brahmin girl, and a son was born from their cohabitation. Should a son born from a noble youth and a Brahmin girl be called a noble after the father or a Brahmin after the mother? He could be called both, Master Gotama. What do you think, Assalayana? Suppose a Brahmin youth here were to cohabit with a noble girl, and a son were to be born from their cohabitation. Should the son born from a Brahmin youth and a noble girl be called a noble after the mother or a Brahmin after the father? He could be called both, Master Gotama. What do you think, Assalayana? Suppose a mare were to be mated with a male donkey, and a foal were to be born as the result. Should the foal be called a horse after the mother, or a donkey after the father? It is a mule, Master Gotama, since it does not belong to either kind. I see the difference in this last case, but I see no difference in either of the former cases. What do you think, Assalayana? Suppose there were two Brahmin students who were brothers, born of the same mother, one studious and acute, and one neither studious nor acute. Which of them would Brahmins feed first at a funeral feast, or at a ceremonial milk rice offering, or at a sacrificial feast, or at a feast for guests? On such occasions, Brahmins would feed first the one who was studious and acute, Master Gotama. For how could what is given to one who is neither studious nor acute bring great fruit? Stop here for a moment. So here, when you have two Brahmins, one is very studious, hard, diligent, and also is very sharp, intelligent, compared to another who is not so diligent or intelligent, then they would give preference to the one who was more studious and acute. What do you think, Assalayana? Suppose there were two Brahmin students who were brothers, born of the same mother, one studious and acute, but immoral and of bad character, and one neither studious nor acute, but virtuous and of good character. Which of them would Brahmins feed first at a funeral feast, or at a ceremonial milk rice offering, or at a sacrificial feast, or at a feast for guests? On such occasions, Brahmins would feed first the one who was neither studious nor acute, but virtuous and of good character, Master Gotama. For how could what is given to one who is immoral and of bad character bring great fruit? And the Buddha said, first, Assalayana, you took your stand on birth, and after that, you took your stand on scriptural learning, and after that, you have come to take your stand on the very ground that purification is for all castes, as I describe it. When this was said, the Brahmin student Assalayana sat silent and dismayed, with shoulders drooping and head down, glum, and without response. Stop here for a moment. So, at first, this Assalayana, he says that a person is superior because of birth. And then after that, he said because of scriptural learning, because Brahmins are supposed to be have great learning, they are versed in the three Vedas. And then after that, the Buddha said, now you agree with me that purification is for all four castes. I guess what the Buddha means is that when the birth is the same, then there are other qualities that are important. One is this second one is the studious and acute one is the learning, scriptural learning. And then the third one, virtuous or good character, is even more important. It's even more important than one who was studious and acute. And this person who is virtuous and of good character, it can be from any caste. Earlier the Buddha showed that it's not only Brahmins who can be virtuous and of good character. Anybody who keeps the who does not do unwholesome actions and does all the 10 wholesome actions or 10 wholesome karmas, then he is purified. In which case, the most important here the Buddha shows is virtue, good character, which is similar to purification. If a person is virtuous or good character, he purifies himself. So Assalayana could not reply and sat dismayed. Knowing this, the Blessed One said to him, "Once, Assalayana, when 7 Brahmin seers were dwelling in leaf huts in the forest, this pernicious view arose in them. Brahmins are the highest caste, those of any other caste are inferior, etc., etc. Now the seer, Devala the dark, Kanha Devala, heard this. Then he arranged his hair and beard, dressed in ochre-colored garments, put on stout sandals, and taking a staff made of gold, he appeared in the courtyard of the 7 Brahmin seers. Then while walking up and down the courtyard of the 7 Brahmin seers, the seer Devala the dark spoke thus, "Where have those worthy Brahmin seers gone? Where have those worthy Brahmin seers gone?" Then the 7 Brahmin seers thought, "Who is walking up and down in the courtyard of the 7 Brahmin seers like a village lout, speaking thus, 'Where have those worthy Brahmin seers gone? Where have those worthy Brahmin seers gone? Let us curse him.' Then the 7 Brahmin seers cursed the seer Devala the dark thus, 'Be ashes, vile one, be ashes, vile one.' But the more the 7 Brahmin seers cursed him, the more comely, beautiful and handsome the seer Devala the dark became. Then the 7 Brahmin seers thought, 'Our asceticism is in vain, our holy life is fruitless, for formerly when we curse anyone thus, "Be ashes, vile one, be ashes, vile one," he always became ashes. But the more we curse this one, the more comely, beautiful and handsome he becomes.' And this Devala said, 'Your asceticism is not in vain, sirs. Your holy life is not fruitless. But sirs, put away your hatred towards me.' And they said, 'We have put away our hatred towards you, sir. Who are you?' 'Have you heard of the seer Devala the dark, sirs?' 'Yes, sir. I am he, sirs.' Then the 7 Brahmin seers went to the seer Devala the dark and paid homage to him. I'll stop here for a moment. These, in the olden days, the Brahmins were supposed to be the priest caste, the ascetics. And so these 7 Brahmins, they were practicing meditation very hard in the forest, staying together in leaf huts. So they must have attained to quite a high level, and they are very good with these mantras. So they say from here that in the past, when they curse somebody, maybe they curse either with their psychic power or with their mantras, that person will turn into ashes. But this Devala, his psychic power is even more powerful. So however hard they tried to kill him, burn him up, they could not do it. So when they heard that he was this famous seer or rishi, Devala the dark, they paid homage to him. Then he said to them, "Sirs, I heard that while the 7 Brahmin seers were dwelling in leaf huts in the forest, this pernicious view arose in them. Brahmins are the highest caste, those of any other caste are inferior, etc." And they said, "That is so, sir. But sirs, do you know if the mother who bore you went only with a Brahmin and never with a non-Brahmin?" And they said, "No, sir." "But sirs, do you know if your mother's back to the 7th generation went only with Brahmins and never with non-Brahmins?" And they said, "No, sir." "But sirs, do you know if the father who begot you went only with a Brahmin woman and never with a non-Brahmin woman?" "No, sirs." But sirs, do you know if your father's fathers back to the 7th generation went with only Brahmin women and never with non-Brahmin women? No, sir. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is showing them, you don't actually know whether you were born from a pure Brahmin mother and father, because you don't know who they slept with and all these things. But sirs, do you know how the conception of an embryo in a womb comes about? Sir, we know how the conception of an embryo in a womb comes about. Here there is a union of the mother and father, and it is the mother's season, and the being to be reborn is present. Thus the conception of an embryo in a womb comes about through the union of these three things. Then, sirs, do you know for sure whether that being to be reborn is a noble or a Brahmin or a merchant or a worker? Sir, we do not know for sure whether that being to be reborn is a noble or a Brahmin or a merchant or a worker. That being so, sirs, then what are you? That being so, sir, we do not know what we are. Now, Assalayana, even those 7 Brahmin seers, on being pressed and questioned and cross-questioned by the seer Devala the Dark on their own assertion about birth, were unable to support it. But how shall you, on being pressed and questioned and cross-questioned by me now, on your assertion about birth, be able to support it? You who rely on the teacher's doctrines are not even fit to be their spoon holder, Puna. When this was said, the Brahmin student Assalayana said to the Blessed One, Magnificent Master Gotama, magnificent Master Gotama, etc. From today, let Master Gotama remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says, in the past, these 7 Brahmin seers so arrogant about their birth, but when they were questioned and cross-questioned by the seer Devala, this seer Devala is Devala the Dark. That means he's not a Brahmin. He's a dark fellow. So when he questioned and cross-questioned them, they admitted they don't know actually. Before their birth, they are supposed to be that this Gandhabba, this intermediate body that lodges itself in the womb. So they don't know their previous birth, whether their previous birth they were a Brahmin or a noble or a merchant or a worker. So that being so, they don't really know what they were before. So the Buddha says, even these 7 Brahmin seers with psychic power, they could not stand up to questioning by the seer Devala. How can you stand up to my questioning? The Buddha says, you are not even fit to be their spoon holder. So this is one of the suttas that shows how they like to argue about with the Buddha about their birth. Now we come to the next sutta, 94, Ghotamukha Sutta, to Ghotamukha. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Venerable Udena was living at Benares in the Kemia mango grove. Now on that occasion the Brahmin Ghotamukha had arrived in Benares for some business or other, and as he was walking and wandering for exercise, he came to the Kemia mango grove. At that time the Venerable Udena was walking up and down in the open. Then the Brahmin Ghotamukha went up to the Venerable Udena and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, still walking up and down with the Venerable Udena, he said this, Worthy recluse, there is no wondrous life that accords with the Dhamma. So it seems to me here, and that may be because I have not seen such venerable ones as yourself, or because I have not seen the Dhamma here. Let's stop here for a moment. So here he is telling the Venerable Udena that there is no wondrous life that accords with the Dhamma, and that may be because I have not seen Such Venerable One says, so probably what he means is that this wondrous life, when he says wondrous life, it probably means ascetics other than Brahmins. So he says no wondrous life that accords with the Dhamma. In other words, that the wondrous, the ascetics who are not Brahmins, they cannot really attain any high state that accords with the Dhamma, or that these wondrous, their Dhamma, they don't really have the real Dhamma. When this was said, the Venerable Udena stepped down from the walk and went into his dwelling, where he sat down on a seat made ready. And Ghotamukha too stepped down from the walk and went into the dwelling, where he stood at one side. Then the Venerable Udena said to him, "There are seats, Brahmin, sit down if you wish." And he said, "We did not sit down because we were waiting for Master Udena to speak. For how could one like myself presume to sit down on a seat without first being invited to do so?" Then the Brahmin Ghotamukha took a low seat, sat down at one side, and said to the Venerable Udena, "Worthy recluse, there is no wondrous life that accords with the Dhamma, so it seems to me here, and that may be because I have not seen such venerable ones as yourself, or because I have not seen the Dhamma here." And Venerable Udena said, "Brahmin, if you think any statement of mine is to be agreed with, then agree with it. If you think any statement of mine is to be argued against, then argue against it. And if you do not understand the meaning of any statement of mine, ask me to clarify it thus. How is this, Master Udena? What is the meaning of this? In this way we can discuss this matter." And he said, "Master Udena, if I think any statement of Master Udena's is to be agreed upon, is to be agreed with, I shall agree with it. If I think any statement of his is to be argued against, I shall argue against it. And if I do not understand the meaning of any statement of Master Udena's, then I shall ask Master Udena to clarify it thus. How is this, Master Udena? What is the meaning of this? In this way, let us discuss this matter." I'll stop here for a moment. So when this Brahmin said, what he said, that there is no wondrous life that accords with the Dhamma, so the Venerable Udena took it as a challenge that he wanted to debate with him. So he went into his kuti and sat down. And this Ghotamukha seems like he is quite polite. He has some regard for this Master Udena, so he took a lower seat. And this Venerable Udena stated, so it's like stated the terms of the debate, and he agreed to stick to these terms. And the Venerable Udena said, "Brahmin, there are 4 kinds of persons to be found existing in the world." What 4? Then he quotes Sutta 51, section 5 to 6. This is about the person who torments himself, but does not torment others. The first one. The second one, let me see, page 445. It's on page 445. The first type of person torments himself. The second type torments others. The third type torments himself and torments others. The fourth type does not torment himself and does not torment others. But Master Udena, the kind of person who does not torment himself, so he asked this Ghotamukha, of these four persons, which one appeals to you? And he said, the kind of person who does not torment himself or pursue the practice of torturing himself, and who does not torment others or pursue the practice of torturing others, who, since he torments neither himself nor others, is here and now hungerless, extinguished and cooled, and abides experiencing bliss, having himself become holy. He does not torment and torture either himself or others, both of whom desire pleasure and recoil from pain. That is why this kind of person satisfies by my mind. So in the same way, he praises the last type of person who does not torment himself nor others. And the Venerable Udena said, Brahmin, there are two kinds of assembly. What two? Here a certain assembly lusts after jewels and earrings and seeks wives and children, men and women slaves, fields and land, gold and silver. But here a certain assembly does not lust after jewels and earrings, but having abandoned wives and children, men and women slaves, fields and land, gold and silver, has gone forth from the home life into homelessness. Now there is this kind of person who does not torment himself or pursue the practice of torturing himself, and who does not torment others or pursue the practice of torturing others, who, since he torments neither himself nor others, is here now hungerless, extinguished and cooled, and abides experiencing bliss, having himself become holy. In which of the two kinds of assembly do you usually see this person, Brahmin? In the assembly that lusts after jewels and earrings and seeks wives and children, men and women slaves, fields and land, gold and silver, or in the assembly that does not lust after jewels and earrings, but having abandoned wives and children, etc., has gone forth from the home life into homelessness. I usually see this kind of person, Master Udena, in the assembly that does not lust after jewels and earrings, but having abandoned wives and children, etc., has gone forth from the home life into homelessness. And then Venerable Udena said, but only just now, Brahmin, we understood you to say, worthy recluse, there is no wondrous life that accords with the Dhamma. So it seems to me here, and that may be because I have not seen such venerable ones as yourself, or because I have not seen the Dhamma here. And he said, certainly, Master Udena, it was in order to learn that I spoke those words. There is a wondrous life that accords with the Dhamma. And so it seems to me here, and may Master Udena remember me to have spoken thus. It would be good if, out of compassion, Master Udena would expound to me in detail those four kinds of persons he mentioned in brief. Stop here for a moment. So here, out of the four types of persons, this Ghotamukha, says the last type, one who tortures neither himself nor others, is the best. Is cool already, become holy. Then Venerable Udena asked him now, where are you likely to see this type of person? Among householders or among renunciants? Then he said among renunciants. That means wondrous. Then the Venerable Udena said, but just now you said there is no wondrous life that accords with Dhamma. Then he said that now only just to learn. So now he asked Venerable Udena to describe in detail the four types of persons. Then Brahmin, listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, sir, the Brahmin Ghotamukha replied. The Venerable Udena said this, Brahmin, what kind of person torments himself and pursues the practice of torturing himself? Here a certain person goes naked, etc., etc. So this description of the four types of persons are exactly as in Sutta number 51, Majjhima Nikaya, section 8 to 28. That's on page 446 to 453. So I won't go through that because you can see it in the book. When this was said, the Brahmin Ghotamukha said to the Venerable Udena, magnificent Master Udena, magnificent Master Udena. Master Udena has made the Dhamma clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright what had been overthrown, revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, or holding up a lamp in the dark for those with eyesight to see forms. I go to Master Udena for refuge, and to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of monks. From today, let Master Udena remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. And Venerable Udena said, do not go to me for refuge, Brahmin. Go for refuge to that same Blessed One to whom I have gone for refuge. Where is he living now, that Master Gotama, Arahant Sammasambuddha, Master Udena? That Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha, has attained final Nibbana, Brahmin. And he said, if we heard that Master Gotama was within 10 leagues, we would go 10 leagues in order to see that Master Gotama. Arahant Sammasambuddha. If we heard that Master Gotama was within 20 leagues, 30, 40, 50, 100 leagues, we would go 100 leagues in order to see that Master Gotama, Arahant Sammasambuddha. But since that Master Gotama has attained to final Nibbana, we go to that Master Gotama for refuge, and to the Dhamma and to the Sangha of monks. From today, let Master Udena remember me as a lay follower who has gone for refuge for life. Now Master Udena, the king of Anga, gives me a daily donation. Let me give Master Udena a regular donation from that. What kind of regular donation does the king of Anga give you, Brahmin? 500 kahapanas, Master Udena. It is not allowable for us to accept gold and silver, Brahmin. That means money. If it is not allowable for Master Udena, I will have a monastery built for Master Udena. If you desire to have a monastery built for me, Brahmin, have an assembly hall built for the Sangha at Pataliputta. That means a sala. I am still more satisfied and pleased that Master Udena suggests that I give a gift to the Sangha. So with this regular donation and another regular donation, I shall have an assembly hall built for the Sangha at Pataliputta. Then with that regular donation which he offered to Master Udena and another regular donation added to it, the Brahmin Ghotamukha had an assembly hall built for the Sangha at Pataliputta, and that is now known as the Ghotamukhi. That's the end of the sutta. So here you can see here that these Brahmins, some of them, like this man, he has a daily allowance of 500 kahapanas, maybe you can say $500 from the king every day. Gives me a daily donation, so $500 every day. So he wanted to give that to the monk, but the monk says we cannot accept money. Then he wanted to build a monastery for him, and this monk didn't want a monastery and asked him to build a sala, assembly hall for the Sangha. So he said, with this regular donation and another regular donation, so he will do it. So these Brahmins, you can see, originally Brahmins were supposed to be ascetics. And they meditated and begged for their food, and that's how they attain psychic powers. And from their psychic powers, they probably converse with the devas and learn a lot of mantras, words of power. So after having all these mantras and some of them psychic power, they were employed by the kings to become their advisors. So after that, the Brahmin caste became lay persons instead of ascetics. They start to possess property, wives and slaves and land, and like this one, he gets a regular allowance from the king. So that's why you can see from this sutta, at that time the Brahmins had become lay persons already. So he thought a wondrous life is no use. There's no such thing as a wondrous life that accords with Dhamma. That means wondrous life, ascetic life, that leads to this Nibbana, that leads to stages of stages of holiness and all these things. But this Udena convinced him otherwise. Okay, now we come to Sutta 95. Canki Sutta with Canki. Thus have I heard. This one also is interesting. On one occasion, the Blessed One was wandering in the Kosalan country with a large Sangha of monks, and eventually he arrived at a Kosalan Brahmin village named Upasada. There the Blessed One stayed in the God's Grove, the Sala tree grove to the north of Upasada. Now on that occasion, the Brahmin Canki was ruling over Upasada, a crown property abounding in living beings, rich in grasslands, woodlands, waterways and grain, a royal endowment, a sacred grant given to him by King Pasenadi of Kosala. Stop here for a moment. So this is another famous Brahmin, and is given all this property, upasada, so he's ruling over it like a sultan or something, and this was given to him by the king. The Brahmin householders of Upasada heard. The recluse Gotama, this description of this Buddha, where they praise the Buddha for being an Arahant and all that. And it is good to see such Arahants. Then the Brahmin householders of Upasada set forth from Upasada in groups and bands and headed northwards to the God's grove, the Sala tree grove. Now on that occasion, the Brahmin Canki had retired to the upper story of his mansion for his midday rest. There he saw the Brahmin householders of Upasada setting forth from Upasada in groups and bands and heading northwards to the God's grove, the Sala tree grove. When he saw them, he asked his minister, "Good minister, why are the Brahmin householders of Upasada setting forth from Upasada in groups and bands and heading northwards to the God's grove, the Sala tree grove?" "Sir, there is the recluse Gotama, the son of the Sakyans, who went forth from the Sakyan clan, who has been wandering in the Kosalan country," etc., etc. They are going to see that Master Gotama. Then, good minister, go to the Brahmin householders of Upasada and tell them, "Sirs, the Brahmin Canki says this. Please wait, sirs. The Brahmin Canki will also go to see the recluse Gotama." "Yes, sir," the minister replied. And he went to the Brahmin householders of Upasada and gave them the message. Now on that occasion, 500 Brahmins from various states were staying at Upasada for some business or other. They heard the Brahmin Canki, the Brahmin Canki, it is said, is going to see the recluse Gotama. Then they went to the Brahmin Canki and asked him, "Sir, is it true that you are going to see the recluse Gotama?" "So it is, sirs, I am going to see the recluse Gotama." And they said, "Sir, do not go to see the recluse Gotama. It is not proper, Master Canki, for you to go and see the recluse Gotama. Rather, it is proper for the recluse Gotama to come and see you. For you, sir, are well born on both sides, of pure maternal and paternal descent, 7 generations back, unassailable and impeccable in respect of birth. Since that is so, Master Canki, it is not proper for you to go to see the recluse Gotama. Rather, it is proper for the recluse Gotama to come to see you. You, sir, are rich, with great wealth and great possessions. You, sir, are a master of the 3 Vedas, with their vocabularies, liturgy, phonology, and etymology, and the histories as a 5th. Skilled in philology and grammar, you are fully versed in natural philosophy and in the marks of a great man. You, sir, are handsome, comely, and graceful, possessing supreme beauty of complexion, with sublime beauty and sublime presence, remarkable to behold. You, sir, are virtuous, mature in virtue, possessing mature virtue. You, sir, are a good speaker with a good delivery. You speak words that are courteous, distinct, flawless, and communicate the meaning. You, sir, teach the teachers of many, and you teach a recitation of the hymns to 300 Brahmin students. You, sir, are honored, respected, revered, venerated, and esteemed by King Pasenadi of Kosala. You, sir, are honored, respected, revered, venerated, and esteemed by the Brahmin Pokara Sati. You, sir, rule over Upasada, a crown property abounding in living beings, etc., a sacred grant given to you by King Pasenadi of Kosala. Since this is so, Master Canki, it is not proper for you to go to see the recluse Gotama. Rather, it is proper for the recluse Gotama to come to see you. Stop here for a moment. So here, these 500 Brahmins, having come from other states, when they heard that this famous Brahmin Canki was going to visit the Buddha, they were not happy because they think they are the superior caste. Somebody like the Buddha, they say they consider inferior, and they think that the Buddha should come to this Canki instead of Canki going to see him. When this was said, the Brahmin Canki told those Brahmins, "Now, sirs, hear from me why it is proper for me to go to see Master Gotama, and why it is not proper for Master Gotama to come to see me. Sirs, the recluse Gotama is well born on both sides of pure maternal and paternal descent, 7 generations back, unassailable and impeccable in respect of birth. Since this is so, sirs, it is not proper for Master Gotama to come to see me. Rather, it is proper for me to go to see Master Gotama. Sirs, the recluse Gotama went forth, abandoning much gold and bullion stored away in vaults and depositories. Sirs, the recluse Gotama went forth from the home life into homelessness while still young, a black-haired young man endowed with the blessing of youth, in the prime of life. Sirs, the recluse Gotama shaved off his hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, and went forth from the home life into homelessness, though his mother and father wished otherwise, and wept with tearful faces. Sirs, the recluse Gotama is handsome, comely, and graceful, possessing supreme beauty of complexion, and with sublime beauty and sublime presence, remarkable to behold. Sirs, the recluse Gotama is virtuous, with noble virtue, with wholesome virtue, possessing wholesome virtue. Sirs, the recluse Gotama is a good speaker with a good delivery. He speaks words that are courteous, distinct, flawless, and communicate the meaning. Sirs, the recluse Gotama is a teacher of the teachers of many. Sirs, the recluse Gotama is free from sensual lust and is without personal vanity. Sirs, the recluse Gotama holds the doctrine of the moral efficacy of action, the doctrine of the moral efficacy of deeds. He does not seek any harm for the line of Brahmins. Sirs, the recluse Gotama went forth from an aristocratic family, from one of the original noble families. Sirs, the recluse Gotama went forth from a rich family, from a family of great wealth and great possessions. Sirs, people come from remote kingdoms and remote districts to question the recluse Gotama. Sirs, many thousands of deities have gone for refuge for life to the recluse Gotama. Sirs, a good report of the recluse Gotama has been spread to this effect. That blessed one is Arahant, Sammasambuddha, perfect in true knowledge and conduct, sublime, knower of worlds, incomparable leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened, blessed. Sirs, the recluse Gotama possesses the 32 marks of a great man. Sirs, King Senia Bimbisara of Magadha and his wife and children have gone for refuge for life to the recluse Gotama. Sirs, King Pasnadi of Kosala and his wife and children have gone for refuge for life to the recluse Gotama. Sirs, the Brahmin Pokarasati and his wife and children have gone for refuge for life to the recluse Gotama. Sirs, the recluse Gotama has arrived at Upasada and is living at Upasada in the God's Grove, the Sala Tree Grove to the north of Upasada. Now any recluses or Brahmins that come to our town are our guests, and guests should be honored, respected, revered, and venerated by us. Since the recluse Gotama has arrived at Upasada, he is our guest, and as our guest, should be honored, respected, revered, and venerated by us. Since that is so, sirs, it is not proper for Master Gotama to come to see me. Rather, it is proper for me to go to see the Master Gotama. And they said, sirs, this much is the praise of Master Gotama that I have learned. But the praise of Master Gotama is not limited to that. For the praise of Master Gotama is immeasurable. Since Master Gotama possesses each of these factors, it is not proper for him to come to see me. Rather, it is proper for me to go to see Master Gotama. Therefore, sirs, let all of us go to see the recluse Gotama. Then the Brahmin Canki, together with a large company of Brahmins, went to the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side. Stop here for a moment. So even though he has heard and believes that the Buddha is an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, still maybe because of their pride, maybe they think that their Brahmins are superior. He didn't pay homage to the Buddha, just exchanged greetings with the Buddha and sat down. Now on that occasion, the Blessed One was seated, finishing some amiable talk with some very senior Brahmins. At the time, sitting in the assembly was a Brahmin student named Kapatika. Young, shaven-headed, 16 years old, he was a master of the three Vedas with their vocabularies, liturgy, phonology, and etymology, and the histories as a fifth. Skilled in philology and grammar, he was fully versed in natural philosophy and the marks of the great man. While the very senior Brahmins were conversing with the Blessed One, he often broke in and interrupted their talk. Then the Blessed One rebuked the Brahmin student Kapatika thus, "Let not the Venerable Bharadvaja break in and interrupt the talk of the very senior Brahmins while they are conversing. Let the Venerable Bharadvaja wait until the talk is finished." When this was said, the Brahmin Canki said to the Blessed One, "Let not Master Gotama rebuke the Brahmin student Kapatika. The Brahmin student Kapatika is a clansman. He is very learned. He has a good delivery. He is wise. He is capable of taking part in this discussion with Master Gotama." Then the Blessed One thought, "Surely, since the Brahmins honor him thus, the Brahmin student Kapatika must be accomplished in the scriptures of the three Vedas." Then the Brahmin student Kapatika thought, "When the recluse Gotama catches my eye, I shall ask him a question." Then, knowing with his own mind the thought in the Brahmin student Kapatika's mind, the Blessed One turned his eye towards him. Then the Brahmin student Kapatika thought, "The recluse Gotama has turned towards me. Suppose I ask him a question." Then he said to the Blessed One, "Master Gotama, in regard to the ancient Brahmanic hymns that have come down through oral transmission and in the scriptural collections, the Brahmins come to the definite conclusion, only this is true, anything else is wrong. What does Master Gotama say about this?" I stop here for a moment. So here is asking the Buddha that according to our tradition, all the Brahmanic hymns that we chant, only this is true. Anything else of other religions is wrong. Just like some people of certain religions, they think that only their religion is the correct one, all other religions are wrong. How then, Bharadvaja, among the Brahmins, is there even a single Brahmin who says thus, "I know this, I see this, only this is true, anything else is wrong"? No, Master Gotama. How then, Bharadvaja, among the Brahmins, is there even a single teacher or a single teacher's teacher back to the seventh generation of teachers who says thus, "I know this, I see this, only this is true, anything else is wrong"? No, Master Gotama. In other words, the Buddha is asking whether any one of these Brahmin teachers, they know directly that this is true. They see for themselves. That means we are implying psychic power, that they know and see all this directly by themselves. And he says no. How then, Bharadvaja, the ancient Brahmin seers, the creators of the hymns, the composers of the hymns, whose ancient hymns that were formerly chanted, uttered and compiled, the Brahmins nowadays still chant and repeat, repeating what was spoken and reciting what was recited. That is, Ataka, Vamaka, Vamadeva, Vesamita, Yamatagi, Angirasa, Bharadvaja, Vaseta, Kasapa and Bagu. Did even these ancient Brahmin seers say thus, "We know this, we see this, only this is true, anything else is wrong"? No, Master Gotama. Stop here for a moment. You see here, the Buddha can quote to them their ancient Brahmin seers, those who created their hymns. And he can mention all these names, Ataka, Vamaka, Vamadeva, Vesamita, etc. Probably many of these Brahmins don't even know who are these ancestors of theirs. So the Buddha said, these ancient Brahmin seers say that they know directly, they see directly this. Only their hymns are correct, everybody else is wrong. And they say no, and he said, "No, Master Gotama." So Bharadvaja, it seems that among the Brahmins there is not even a single Brahmin who says thus, "I know this, I see this, only this is true, anything else is wrong." And among the Brahmins there is not even a single teacher or a single teacher's teacher back to the seventh generation of teachers who says thus, "I know this, I see this, only this is true, anything else is wrong." And the ancient Brahmin seers, the creators of the hymns, the composers of the hymns, whose ancient hymns that were formerly chanted, uttered and compiled, the Brahmins nowadays still chant and repeat, that is Attaka, Vamaka, etc. Even these ancient Brahmin seers did not say thus, we know this, we see this, only this is true, anything else is wrong. Suppose there were a file of blind men, each in touch with the next. The first one does not see, the middle one does not see, the last one does not see. So too, Bharadvaja, in regard to their statement, the Brahmins seem to be like a file of blind men. First one does not see, the middle one does not see, the last one does not see. What do you think, Bharadvaja? That being so, does not the faith of the Brahmins turn out to be groundless? Stop here for a moment. So you can see here, in front of many hundreds of these Brahmins, the Buddha is putting them down, saying that you Brahmins, you claim only your teaching is true, but your teachers, all of you are like blind men, one leading, following the one in front, but all are blind. Not even a single one of you have seen this truth directly and know directly. This is quite a statement to make in front of several hundred Brahmins who are so arrogant about their caste. Then he said, the Brahmins honor this not only out of faith, Master Gotama, they also honor it as oral tradition. And the Buddha said, Bharadvaja, first you took your stand on faith, now you speak of oral tradition. There are 5 things, Bharadvaja, that may turn out in 2 different ways here and now. What 5? Faith, approval, oral tradition, reason, cogitation, and reflective acceptance of a view. These 5 things may turn out in 2 different ways here and now. Now something may be fully accepted out of faith, yet it may be empty, hollow, and false. But something else may not be fully accepted out of faith, yet it may be factual, true, and unmistaken. Again, something may be fully approved of, or may be well cogitated, may be well reflected upon, yet it may be empty, hollow, and false. But something else may not be well reflected upon, yet it may be factual, true, and unmistaken. Under these conditions, it is not proper for a wise man who preserves truth to come to the definite conclusion, only this is true, anything else is wrong. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha anticipated that he was probably going to bring up all the other things. So the Buddha told him there are 5 things. You can take your stand on faith as you originally did. Or you can take your stand on oral tradition, and there are 3 more. You can take your stand on reason, cogitation, or approval or reflective acceptance of a view. But any one of these 5, the Buddha says, it may be true or it may be false. So even before he has brought up all the others, the Buddha already told him all these are possible. Then he said, but Master Gotama, in what way is there the preservation of truth? How does one preserve truth? We asked Master Gotama about the preservation of truth. So you see the last sentence of the Buddha said, under these conditions, it is not proper for a wise man who preserves truth to come to the definite conclusion, only this is true, anything else is wrong. So this young Brahmin, he realized that he could not argue with the Buddha. So he stops arguing here and he wants to learn from the Buddha. He humbles himself and asks the Buddha, in what way is there a preservation of truth? Since the Buddha mentioned about the wise man who preserves truth, then he asked how to preserve truth. And the Buddha said, if a person has faith, Bharadvaja, he preserves truth when he says, my faith is thus, but he does not yet come to the definite conclusion, only this is true, anything else is wrong. In this way, Bharadvaja, there is the preservation of truth. In this way, he preserves truth. In this way, we describe the preservation of truth. But as yet, there is no discovery of truth. Similarly, if a person approves of something, or if he receives an oral tradition, or he reaches a conclusion based on reason cogitation, or if he gains a reflective acceptance of a view. He preserves truth when he says, my reflective acceptance of a view is thus, but he does not yet come to the definite conclusion, only this is true, anything else is wrong. In this way too, Bharadvaja, there is preservation of truth. In this way he preserves truth. In this way we describe the preservation of truth. But as yet there is no discovery of truth. So Buddha explained to him what is meant by preservation of truth. But the Buddha says, at this point, there's still no discovery of truth. And he asks, in that way, Master Gotama, there is the preservation of truth. In that way, one preserves truth. In that way, we recognize the preservation of truth. But in what way, Master Gotama, is there the discovery of truth? In what way does one discover truth? We ask Master Gotama about the discovery of truth. Here, Bharadvaja, a monk may be living in dependence on some village or town. Then a householder or a householder's son goes to him and investigates him in regard to three kinds of states: in regard to states based on greed, in regard to states based on hatred, and in regard to states based on delusion. Are there in this Venerable One any states based on greed, such that with his mind obsessed by those states, while not knowing he might say, I know, or while not seeing he might say, I see, or he might urge others to act in a way that would lead to their harm and suffering for a long time? As he investigates him, he comes to know there are no such states based on greed in this Venerable One. The bodily behavior and the verbal behavior of this Venerable One are not those of one affected by greed. And the Dhamma that this Venerable One teaches is profound, hard to see and hard to understand, peaceful and sublime, unattainable by mere reasoning, subtle to be experienced by the wise. This Dhamma cannot easily be taught by one affected by greed. When he has investigated him and has seen that he is purified from states based on greed, he next investigates him in regard to states based on hatred. Are there in this Venerable One any states based on hatred, such that with his mind obsessed by those states, etc., he might urge others to act in a way that would lead to their harm and suffering for a long time? As he investigates him, he comes to know there are no such states based on hate in this Venerable One. The bodily behavior and verbal behavior of this Venerable One are not those of one affected by hate. And the Dhamma that this Venerable One teaches is profound, etc., to be experienced by the wise. This Dhamma cannot easily be taught by one affected by hate. When he has investigated him and has seen that he is purified from states based on hate, he next investigates him in regard to states based on delusion. Are there in this Venerable One any states based on delusion, such that with his mind obsessed by these states, etc., he might urge others to act in a way that would lead to their harm and suffering for a long time? As he investigates him, he comes to know there are no such states based on delusion in this Venerable One. The bodily behavior and verbal behavior of this Venerable One are not those of one affected by delusion. And the Dhamma that this Venerable One teaches is profound, etc., to be experienced by the wise. This Dhamma cannot easily be taught by one affected by delusion. So here, I'll stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says that a lay person, when he comes to a monk, before he can have faith in the monk, he should investigate whether that monk has greed, hatred, or delusion or not. And these states, if he has, it is evident by his bodily behavior, verbal behavior, and mental. So the Buddha is saying, when you come to a teacher, you have to investigate him in these three aspects. When he has investigated him and has seen that he is purified from states based on delusion, then he places faith in him. Filled with faith, he visits him and pays respect to him. Having paid respect to him, he gives ear. When he gives ear, he hears the Dhamma. Having heard the Dhamma, he memorizes it and examines the meaning of the teachings he has memorized. When he examines their meaning, he gains a reflective acceptance of those teachings. When he has gained a reflective acceptance of those teachings, zeal springs up. When zeal has sprung up, he applies his will. Having applied his will, he scrutinizes. Having scrutinized, he strives. Resolutely striving, he realizes with the body the ultimate truth and sees it by penetrating it with wisdom. In this way, Bharadvaja, there is the discovery of truth. In this way, one discovers truth. In this way, we describe the discovery of truth. But as yet, there is no final arrival at truth. Stop here for a moment. So here, you see these steps. It's worthwhile to pay careful attention here. When a person comes to a prospective teacher, first he must investigate him, whether he has greed, hatred and delusion. And when he sees that he has no greed, hatred and delusion, and he teaches a Dhamma that is profound, then he places faith in the teacher. And then, having faith in the teacher, he should visit the teacher often. And when he visits the teacher, he should be respectful. When he is respectful, the teacher teaches him the Dhamma. Then he hears the Dhamma and memorizes the Dhamma. In those days, they had no books, so they had to memorize. And nowadays, it's more convenient. We have books. And then examine the meaning of the Dhamma. And then when he understands, then he gains a reflective acceptance. And then zeal springs up. And then after that, he starts to cultivate the holy path. Applies his will and scrutinizes. And then he strives. And then realizes with the body the ultimate truth. Realizes with the body, that means he attains the jhanas, the states of meditative absorption with the body, and then penetrates it with wisdom. In that way, Master Gotama, there is the discovery of truth. In that way, one discovers truth. In that way, we recognize the discovery of truth. But in what way, Master Gotama, is there the final arrival at truth? In what way does one finally arrive at truth? We asked Master Gotama about the final arrival at truth. And the Buddha said, the final arrival at truth, Bharadvaja, lies in the repetition, development and cultivation of those same things. In this way, Bharadvaja, there is the final arrival at truth. In this way, one finally arrives at truth. In this way, we describe the final arrival at truth. I'll stop here for a moment. So here, having learned the Dhamma and cultivating the holy path, the Buddha said, you have to repeat, repetition, development, and cultivation of those same things. Then finally, you arrive at the truth. In that way, Master Gotama, there is the final arrival at truth. In that way, one finally arrives at truth. In that way, we recognize the final arrival at truth. But what, Master Gotama, is most helpful for the final arrival at truth? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for the final arrival at truth. And the Buddha said, striving is the most helpful for the final arrival at truth, Bharadvaja. If one does not strive, one will not finally arrive at truth. But because one strives, one does finally arrive at truth. That is why striving is most helpful for the final arrival at truth. This striving can also be said to be energetic effort. Energetic effort, diligence is most helpful. But what, Master Gotama, is most helpful for striving? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for striving. Scrutiny is most helpful for striving, Bharadvaja. If one does not scrutinize, one will not strive. But because one scrutinizes, one strives. That is why scrutiny is most helpful for striving. But what, Master Gotama, is most helpful for scrutiny? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for scrutiny. Application of will is most helpful for scrutiny, Bharadvaja. If one does not apply one's will, one will not scrutinize. But because one applies one's will, one scrutinizes. That is why application of will is most helpful for scrutiny. But what, Master Gotama, is most helpful for application of will? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for application of will. Zeal is most helpful for application of will, Bharadvaja. If one does not arouse zeal, one will not apply one's will. But because one arouses zeal, one applies one's will. That is why zeal is most helpful for application of the will. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for zeal? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for zeal. A reflective acceptance of the teachings is most helpful for zeal, Bharadvaja. If one does not gain a reflective acceptance of the teachings, zeal will not spring up. But because one gains a reflective acceptance of the teachings, zeal springs up. That is why a reflective acceptance of the teachings is most helpful for zeal. Stop here for a moment. This one, in our Dhamma, reflective acceptance of the teachings means you learn the Dhamma, especially on the Four Noble Truths, and you understand. When you understand, then you get a reflective acceptance. And when this happens, you have attained right view. You have entered the stream. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for a reflective acceptance of the teachings? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for a reflective acceptance of the teachings. Examination of the teaching is most helpful for a reflective acceptance of the teachings, Bharadvaja. If one does not examine their meaning, one will not gain a reflective acceptance of the teachings. But because one examines their meaning, one gains a reflective acceptance of the teachings. That is why examination of the meaning is most helpful for a reflective acceptance of the teachings. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for examination of the meaning? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for examination of meaning. Memorizing the teachings is most helpful for examining the meaning, Bharadvaja. If one does not memorize a teaching, one will not examine its meaning. But because one memorizes a teaching, one examines its meaning. Stop here for a moment. This memorizing the teachings, I mentioned, it was because in the past they did not have books. So they had to repeat the Dhamma that they heard, especially like the Suttas. They repeat it. Then it becomes more familiar to them. Then from there they examine the meaning. But nowadays, memorizing the teachings, you can say, can be replaced by studying the Suttas in the book form. The Nikayas, you keep reading the Nikayas again and again and again and again. It's just like memorizing the teachings. Or listening to the Dhamma talks like these. Dhamma talks based on the Suttas. I listen to them again and again and again and again. Then it slowly sinks in. That is equivalent to memorizing the teachings. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for memorizing the teachings? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for memorizing the teachings. Hearing the Dhamma is most helpful for memorizing the teachings, Bharadvaja. If one does not hear the Dhamma, one will not memorize the teachings. But because one hears the Dhamma, one memorizes the teachings. That's why hearing the Dhamma is most helpful for memorizing the teachings. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for hearing the Dhamma? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for hearing the Dhamma. Giving ear is most helpful for hearing the Dhamma, Bharadvaja. If one does not give ear, one will not hear the Dhamma. But because one gives ear, one hears the Dhamma. This is why giving ear is most helpful for hearing the Dhamma. Stop here for a moment. The willingness to learn the Dhamma, to hear the Dhamma, or to read the Dhamma, that is very important. Only when you understand the Dhamma and you gain a reflective acceptance of the teachings, then only you can progress to Aryan stages. If you don't hear the Dhamma, you cannot get right view. And if you cannot get right view, you have not entered on the Noble Eightfold Path. The Noble Eightfold Path always starts with the first factor, right view. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for giving ear? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for giving ear. Paying respect is most helpful for giving ear, Bharadvaja. If one does not pay respect, one will not give ear. But because one pays respect, one gives ear. That is why paying respect is most helpful for giving ear. Stop here for a moment. This paying respect, you see the Buddha mentioned, is quite important. Some people, they come to the Dhamma, they are very arrogant. they find it very difficult to pay respect to a monk. So if they have this kind of attitude, it's an obstruction, because if a person has this type of attitude, it shows that the person thinks that he knows everything, that he knows a lot. So he is not willing to humble himself. Only when you are willing to humble yourself, then only you are willing to give ear, willing to hear what the teacher says, instead of having all your own opinions. So this respect, also paying respect, is also very helpful. That's why, like in the Thai tradition, new novice monks, either samanera or even bhikkhu, fully ordained monk, if he is still new, whenever he speaks to the teacher in Thailand, they have to put their palms together, Anjali. Every time they speak to the teacher, they Anjali. And this tradition is not only for disciples. It is it's a very good tradition. Even senior monks, like me, if I speak to a more senior monk, it becomes natural to put the hands together out of respect, to show respect. So it's a very good practice to humble yourself. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for paying respect? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for paying respect. Visiting is most helpful for paying respect, Bharadvaja. If one does not visit a teacher, one will not pay respect to him. But because one visits a teacher, one pays respect to him. That is why visiting is most helpful for paying respect. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for visiting? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for visiting. Faith is most helpful for visiting, Bharadvaja. If faith in the teacher does not arise, one will not visit him. But because faith in the teacher arises, one visits him. That is why faith is most helpful for visiting. We asked Master Gotama about the preservation of truth, and Master Gotama answered about the preservation of truth. We approve of and accept that answer, and so we are satisfied. We asked Master Gotama about the discovery of truth, and Master Gotama answered about the discovery of truth. We approve of and accept that answer, and so we are satisfied. We asked Master Gotama about the final arrival at truth, and Master Gotama answered about the final arrival at truth. We approve of and accept that answer, and so we are satisfied. We asked Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for the final arrival at truth, and Master Gotama answered about the thing most helpful for the final arrival at truth. We approve of and accept that answer, and so we are satisfied. Whatever we ask Master Gotama about, that he has answered us. We approve of and accept that answer, and so we are satisfied. Formerly, Master Gotama, we used to think, who are these bald-pated recluses, these swarthy menial offspring of the kinsman's feet, that they would understand the Dhamma? But Master Gotama has inspired in me love for recluses, confidence in recluses, reverence for recluses, magnificent Master Gotama, etc. So he took refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. From today, let Master Gotama remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. That's the end of the sutta. So here you see this arrogant young Brahmin come to argue with the Buddha. Finally, he realized that the Buddha is actually an Arahant Sammasambuddha. So he asked questions to learn the Dhamma. So whatever he asked, the Buddha answered him very clearly. So in the end, he took refuge with the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, which means that actually he changed his religion from being one of the Brahmin religion, became the Buddhist. So you see, like all this teaching the Buddha gave in front of hundreds of these Brahmins, probably most of them would have taken refuge with the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha and became followers of the Buddha. Okay, we end here. Very long tonight, very long. But this last sutta is very good. You see how if a person wants to learn, all the steps are laid out very clearly by the Buddha. A lot of people, we don't know all these things. Instead of like the Buddha says, when you come to a potential teacher, you should investigate him, whether he has greed, hatred and delusion. But a lot of people, instead of investigating the teacher, they want to look for psychic power in the teacher, whether the teacher got a big reputation and all these things. All this is not the way of the Dhamma. Okay, anything to discuss? Yes. The foundation of the Dhamma must be there before you can judge whether the teacher is teaching according to the Dhamma or not. And the Buddha says, if the teacher teaches according to the actual Dhamma of the Buddha, that means according to the early Nikayas, then you can follow him. Otherwise, you should not follow him. So if a person, what happens usually, a lot of people who are new, they don't know how to judge because they have no Dhamma foundation. They don't know how to judge, and they are easily impressed by what other people say. Other people say, "Oh, liao su hu," then they will also accept "oh liao su hu." So, "oh liao su hu" means it's a teacher with substance, somebody who is a great teacher and all these things. So that's why people who are new always they get cheated in that way.
Okay, how long does one take to really comprehend the Dhamma, coming to provision to the Dhamma, the four Nikayas? Can a person who claim that they have studied the Buddha do that by just provision? How long does it take to provision?
How long one takes to understand the Dhamma, it depends on the person. Just like how long does one take to attain jhana, it depends on the person. What is important, the Buddha says, is that to understand the Dhamma, we need a clear mind, a mind devoid of the five hindrances. So, samatha, meditation, that's why in the Buddha's teachings is the only real meditation. We meditate to sharpen our mind. Then at the same time, we learn the Dhamma. These two things are the fundamentals of the spiritual path. The theory and the practice. The theory is the learning the original Dhamma of the Buddha according to the Nikayas, the Suttas. And the practice is the sharpening the mind by meditation. These two go together and can be done simultaneously. So as your mind sharpens, you will understand the Dhamma more clearly. So a person with a sharper mind, for example, a person with a high IQ, when he studies the suttas, he will understand much faster than a person with a low IQ.
I think next is touch on the differences. We read the past two suttas, Brahmins like Seva and his assembly, Brahmayu and Ghotamukha. We know that the Brahmins from young they were learning the scriptures, so it's quite natural for them to be very attached to their views. And yet we see that they so willingly or perhaps so fast or accept the Buddha's teaching. Is it because of the hindrances is much lower because of practicing Vihara?
Some of them, you actually, even though they learn wrong Dhamma, but they meditate. That's why you see, like earlier, the sutta on who this Brahmayu, I think this old 120-year-old Brahmin who came to the Buddha, and then later became a disciple of the Buddha. And soon after that, he passed away. And the Buddha said that he was reborn as an Anagamin, which shows that he had already attained the 4 jhanas. And so from there, you can see why some of them are arrogant, because they have already attained certain states of meditation. So they think they have already seen the Dhamma, that is their Dhamma. So that's why some of them are quite arrogant when they meet the Buddha. So when the Buddha really makes very plain the Dhamma to them, then because they have a very clear mind, they can accept and even like Sela, renounce, go forth as a Buddha's monk disciple. So it's unfortunate that they learn the wrong Dhamma, but those who had the courage and the straightforwardness to come and see the Buddha and question the Buddha, then they became disciples of the Buddha.
One last one is would like to have this take on Buddhist monks who only accept one Nikaya, for example. Now there is a trend that since Samyutta Nikaya is older, there are advocates of only studying the Samyutta Nikaya or the Samyutta Dhamma. So what's this take?
For somebody to restrict himself to one Nikaya, it's only okay if at the beginning you study one Nikaya, but all the time to restrict yourself to one Nikaya, I think that's really silly. When there are 4 Nikayas available, why do you want to restrict yourself to only one Nikaya? Because the Buddha taught so many suttas for a purpose. The Buddha taught about 5,000 suttas because when you explain the truth, you can explain it from one angle or another angle or another angle. So the more suttas we study, the more we will understand. For example, Satipatthana. There are some people, they just study the Satipatthana Sutta and they think they understand everything about Satipatthana. This is not true at all, because if you study the Satipatthana Sangyutta, where there are so many suttas explaining Satipatthana, then you can understand it very much better. So it's silly to restrict yourself to one Nikaya. Also, as I mentioned last night, there are some teachers who are very possessive and they want to restrict their disciples to only hear their words and not to hear the words of any other teacher or see the books of any other teacher. That also is it just shows that the ego is there. If that person is humble, he will know that monks are not supposed to teach the Dhamma. Monks are supposed to teach the Buddha's Dhamma. We are all Sakya Putta, sons of the Sakyan. The Dhamma does not belong to us. The Dhamma is from the Sammasambuddha, Arahan Sammasambuddha. So it is our duty to teach the Dhamma according to what the Buddha said, not according to our own opinion. So to tell the disciple that there is only listen to his words is just arrogance. It is not his Dhamma, and the Dhamma is the Buddha's Dhamma, and the best source of the Dhamma is the original 4 Nikayas, and we know that the Pali Suttas, the Pali Nikayas are the most accurate that we have. Even a scholar like the famous Professor Hirakawa, he says that the Pali Suttas have been preserved intact from the time of Emperor Asoka until now. So the most accurate source of the Buddha's teachings are in the 4 Pali Nikayas, the Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Sangyutta Nikaya and Anguttara Nikaya.
I understand that one get him to go to be a novice for a year, or maybe more, and then to be a monk. After you become a monk, you speak some 5 years to sort of graduate and understand all this teaching that you have to be better. Can you comment on this, please?
You mean want me to comment about this?
My understanding is correct. 1 year seminar as a novice, and 5 years as a monk. Before you can be independent.
Or before a monk can be independent. In the Vinaya books, a Samanera has to stay with the teacher. A Samanera is under probation, so a Samanera cannot live by himself. And a young monk also, a young monk who does not have 5 vasa is supposed to stay with the teacher for 5 years to learn the Dhamma and the Vinaya and all the basic things. And after 5 years, that monk can be independent, provided he is knowledgeable about the Dhamma and the Vinaya. In the Vinaya books, the Buddha said, if, for example, a certain monk is uneducated and he cannot read the suttas and the Nikayas, and then and he stays with the teacher. He does not learn enough of the suttas and the Vinaya. Even after 5 years, he cannot be independent. He has to stay with the teacher until such time that he is learned in the suttas and the Vinaya. So if he is uneducated at all, he cannot be independent by himself. All his life, he has to stay with the teacher. Otherwise, he might be teaching others what is not Dhamma. He might think that is Dhamma. On the other hand, the Buddha says in the Vinaya books that somebody, after he comes into monkhood, after he is fully ordained, even if he does not have 5 years as a monk, if he wants to strive, meditate hard, he's allowed to stay alone. But preferably during the Vasa, he should stay with senior monks to learn. Other than that, especially like for example, somebody has gone forth in old age, and he feels he does not have much time, and he also has a good foundation in the Dhamma. For example, a lay person who has studied the Dhamma for many years, and then he goes forth late in life, then it is allowable for him to, for example, go and live alone in a cave and meditate and not mix with people.
Canki, what happens if a student who has to teach, even though after 5 years it's quite impossible to teach that person and really show respect and not much respect or love for the teacher. So what does one as a teacher do with such a student?
If a student, a monk disciple, he does not show enough respect and faith and all these things, it only means that he has not learned enough of the Dhamma and the Vinaya. So if he has not learned enough of the Dhamma and Vinaya, he should not become independent, stay by himself. Also he should not accept disciples later on, even if he has 10 vasa, because he has not learned enough. So if a person actually knows the Dhamma and Vinaya, he practices correctly, he should become very humble. He should become very humble, and his temper also should come down.
Very important. So I'm interested in knowing, let's say, how long does it take for a teacher to assess a seminar? Whether he is of the right caliber or whether he has a quality to be ordained as a monk?
Generally in the Vinaya, 4 months is enough time, according to the Buddha, to judge a person generally. But that is only generally true. There are some people, they hide their character very well. So you need longer period before their defilements show. Okay?
When disrespect shows up in the hobbies of the monk, is he allowed to move on to another teacher?
In the Vinaya, when a disciple, a monk disciple, has certain faults, for example, not enough faith in the teacher, not enough respect in the teacher, not enough love for the teacher, no sense of shame towards the teacher, then the teacher, according to the Vinaya, should chase him away, expel him. So ask him to leave. So when that new young monk leaves, he goes to another monastery. Such a monk probably won't change his character. He go to another monastery, it will be the same. So in strict monasteries, if a monk from somewhere else comes to that monastery, that strict monastery will require a letter of recommendation to sort of to certify that this particular monk is of good character. So that is a good practice. So there are a lot of lax monasteries. They won't require a letter. So in which case, as rotten monks come in also, they accept. So it's a good practice to ask for a letter if some monk comes, unless he is known before. Okay. Shall we end here? Getting late.